Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adam Pulaski, and I'm with Andy Bass here. Thank you for joining our webinar. We're going to get started in just a minute here. We're just waiting for some more people to hop on. But certainly, we're excited about what we're going to talk about today, which is the beginning of building your financial plan. If anybody has any issues or can't see us, please just submit something through either the chat window or a message. But we do have a monitor who's kind of overlooking us to make sure that everything's working and operating. But if for some reason you're having some issues, please let us know. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here about building your financial plan. So we're going to do a Q&A session at the end. So if anybody has any questions as we're going along, please go ahead and just raise your hand or submit them in there, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. But for now, let's go ahead and we're going to get started. So what is financial planning? Financial planning is the process of gathering, understanding, implementing, and managing your financial resources in order to use them more effectively now and in the future. So a bit of a mouthful there, but that is the definition of what we're trying to look at today. And what we're trying to do is figure out what are the steps that are going to make your financial plan get established and be effective and help you reach these goals. So that's what we're talking about today. Here are the key topics as it relates to a financial plan. First topic, we got cash flow and budgeting. This is going to be like the foundation of any financial plan here. We're going to be talking about how much money you're bringing in from your job, how much money you're spending, and whether there's a surplus or anything left over at the end. Those are kind of the primary resources for building any financial plan. Next, we're going to talk about risk management. Risk management, a lot of people can think about things like investment risk, and if the market goes down, what's going to happen to my portfolio? But there's a lot of other things out there. There's other holes in someone's financial plan that are going to need to be looked at that can be covered up with either insurance or other types of protection that you're going to need in order to make sure that you don't have any missteps in case something bad happens. Investment management. People always talk about diversification and making sure that you've got stocks and bonds and a good balance. Well, you also need to worry about your overall allocation and whether you're taking the appropriate amount of investment risk. So are you taking on enough risk to get the types of returns you're going to need to accomplish your goals? Or are you taking on too little risk to make that happen? Or are you taking on so much that you're opening yourself up that you're going to have a big drop in the market, and it's going to hurt your ability to retire at a given time. So you've got to have the right balance there between the amount of risk you're taking and the potential for return given what your set of goals are. Another important piece here is debt management. It's important to make sure that you're using debt effectively. If you have a mortgage on your house, do you have a fixed or a variable mortgage? Do you have a 30-year or 15-year? And when was the last time you refinanced? Currently rates have been dropping over the last few months here, and if you've got 5.5% or 5.25% on your mortgage, there might be an opportunity there where you can lower that interest rate. Another piece is tax planning. A lot of people they let their CPA take care of it, and they don't think about it. But there are certain things that you need to do along the way to make sure that you're using investment vehicles that help lower your taxable income if possible. So are you using retirement accounts effectively in your investment savings? Are you paying homestead property taxes on your main house, but do you have a secondary home that you're not paying homestead tax on? So there's a lot of pieces that are going to come into play, and the tax planning is its own little bucket there, but a very important piece to your overall financial plan. Next step would be estate planning. Andy's going to talk about that in more detail at the end of the presentation, but another key topic for a financial plan. And lastly, one of the least fun areas for most people is insurance planning. You don't want to think about, the event of a loss of life, but that can have a dramatic effect on your ability to reach your goals. And it's also important to think about things like disability. You're more likely to have, a situation where you can't work for a period of time than you are to, die before retirement. So it's important to have some kind of disability coverage to help protect and make a solid plan.
So Adam, what I just like to say, if one thinks about a successful business, most businesses are successful because they have a good strategic plan and they have a discipline in how they approach both their investments and dedication to what they're trying to achieve in their business activities. We believe the similar discipline is needed for individuals, and rather than it being called a strategic plan, it's called financial planning. There are a lot of the same concepts, basically understanding risk, understanding cash flows, understanding long-term impacts, and basically helping you understand how expenses impact future goals and future needs, maybe 10 years, 20 years down the road. And so this is a process that's needed whether you're in your 20s starting out in life or later in life getting ready for retirement or in retirement. Having a knowledge of these issues is important to have a successful life plan.
Good job, Andy. Okay, so let's move forward here. So some of the key questions that are gonna come up in the financial planning process are listed here. Sometimes people don't understand that, they think about money in different ways. Everybody's got a different history of, how they think about money, but here's some key questions that we think are important to ask yourself. And as you try and go through the process of answering them, you can kind of think about, okay, well, if I have a plan in place, how is it going to help me, answer some of these questions? Okay, so first question here, what goals are most important to me, and how do I prioritize which to save for? This is a common question that we get when we're working with our clients is, do I save for, college for my kids or for retirement? You've got kind of a shorter term goal and a longer term goal. And, how do I know, which I should be saving for and how much money goes to each? Creating a priority of which is most important to you and what effective strategies you can use for each of them is going to be very helpful in answering this question. There's a myriad of other things that could come up, like, hey, we want to purchase a house, and that's kind of a short-term goal. How much short-term cash are we going to need for that? So by having a priority of what's most important, you can kind of answer this question here. How much do I save or spend in a year? Knowing how much excess financial resources you have after you pay your have-tos, your non-discretionary expenses, is going to give you an idea of how much wiggle room you have when you're trying to say, I'm going to save for X, Y, or Z. Do I have proper choices in my retirement or 401k plan, and will I have enough to retire when I intend to? There are a lot of different calculators that are usually tied within your 401k plan at work that tell you, hey, you're going to have enough when you retire, or you're not going to have enough. And it's really a more complex question than saying I need X amount of dollars, when I retire. There's a lot of things that are going to change as you get from the beginning of your working career to the end. And you need to kind of factor in, increasing healthcare costs, and are you going to move to a different state in retirement? And all these types of things can be answered or calculated or even estimated by using a financial planning tool or working with an advisor. Am I borrowing money efficiently? I talked about that earlier, about whether you're, have the right mortgage for what your needs are. So I'll kind of move on from that. Is my estate plan up to date, and do I have a will, trust, verbal power of attorney, healthcare proxy, or trust? All of these key estate planning documents, are really important to protecting, your financial net worth, and those are things that Andy's going to talk about more again a little bit later. Have I named the proper beneficiaries on my insurance policies and retirement accounts? Something that people often overlook is they have life changes. Did I add my spouse to all my retirement accounts and all my accounts at work and all over the place? these things get overlooked more often than you think, and it's good to at least once a year kind of be reviewing these things to make sure that you've got it scheduled so that you've got your spouse taken care of, or your kids, or their extended families. There's a lot of things you want to make sure that you're watching out for, so that your goals are happening after you pass on. Do I have the proper amount of insurance so my family will be taken care of if I die, become disabled, or am sued? Depending on what types of debt and what your long-term goals are, you're going to want to make sure that you've got enough insurance to replace the income that is gone when you have a death. If you are to pass away, are you still going to be able to pay for your kids' college, to pay off your mortgage? Is your spouse going to be able to save enough for retirement so that they're not struggling when you're gone? We need to do some calculations here to figure out what the exact number is, but it's really important that you've got that kind of a backstop to your financial plan. Okay, so here is a flow chart kind of explaining the overall process of creating a financial plan, because we're always saying, like, how do we do this? How do we get started? How do I start to establish some of these things for myself, so that I can so I can sleep easier at night, so I know what's going on and I know I'm protected. So the first step in creating a solid financial plan is always to get organized and gather all the information that you have. Gather all of your investment statements, gather all of your information about the debt that you have, and do a budget, like create a catalog of what your expenses are, so you know how much you're spending every month. A lot of people don't want to take the time to create a budget. It's not fun, but it'll give you a true insight to how much you're spending each year, and it's really important to what we're trying to do here. Get information on your insurance coverage, another important piece to what's going on. The second part, and might be the second most important part here, is defining your goals. Now, it's very simple to say, like, well, I want to retire when I'm 65, and I want to pay for my kids' school, and that's that, and I think I'm going to live to 90, and I don't really have anything more complicated than that. Am I able to do it? How much money do I need? Well, you really need to get specific about what those goals are and when they're going to happen. If you want to buy a house in 5 years, well, you need to start planning for that. And the earlier you can plan for that, the more strategies are going to be available to you. So I implore people to try and be as specific and detailed about all of their goals, because it's very key in setting up your investment portfolio to make sure that it's matching those timelines and those targets. Third step is analyze the data. So you take all that information that you gathered about what you have, what your income is, what you got going out, and you got your goals, and then you try and see, are we able to reach what we're trying to do here? Are we on track? Do we need to be saving more? Do we have retirement plans established? Are we saving in the proper investment vehicles? We're going to do all of that in this point where we're analyzing the data, and some people need to go to their advisor and ask some questions about, like, hey, is this enough? Am I doing the right things here? And that's why working with a financial planner is so important. Fourth step, implementing a plan. What strategies are going to use? What's our investment allocation going to be? Do we have our 401ks? Are they invested the same way that our outside investment accounts are? Do we have a bunch of money sitting in the bank in cash that's not getting any return for us? We're going to need to take some steps here to really track towards these goals, and implementing this plan is very important. And then the final step is monitor progress. You're going to have things that come up in life that are going to be changes in your financial plan. You're going to say, oh, well, I was planning on paying for one of my kids' marriages, and now I'm not going to do that, or now they're going to have a second wedding. How do I change my estate plan to make sure that only my kid who is now divorced, that they're taken care of and their kids are taken care of, and not their ex-spouse? Financial plans are guaranteed to change, and coming back to this and revisiting it and seeing if you're on track and making the proper changes is always going to be very important. We'll move on to a couple slides here. I'm going to go through these really quickly, but this is just on the importance of investments and starting early as possible. When you look at your financial planning, you say, well, I gotta cover these expenses now, and I'm going to wait later to invest. This chart helps show you why that's not the best idea. And saving some now and getting those compound interest returns is very important. And what we're seeing here is you've got, look at the first two people here. We've got Susan, who's investing $5,000 annually between 25 and 35. In total, she invests $50,000. And when she's 65 years old at retirement, she's got $602,000. Bill, who waited until 35 and saved $5,000 annually until he was 65, invested $150,000 in total of real dollars, and he only ends up with $540,000. So all I have this chart in here is to illustrate that it's very important to start as early as possible. And a lot of you who are on this call are older than 25, but the difference between 45 and 50 is very important too. So don't think that it's too late to get on board here. Just know that the earlier you start, the better. This next slide kind of shows the same thing. If you're trying to reach, a goal of $1 million at retirement, here's the monthly amount that you need in order to reach those goals. So, if you're 20, it's only $361 that you'll save each month. If you're 40, it's $1,400. So there's a big difference there. Again, starting earlier is always the best. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next piece, which is estate planning. I'm going to let Annie kind of talk about some of the slides here. I'm going into a little more detail for you.
Thanks, Adam. I just wanted to point out, lately I get a lot of blank stares when I talk about estate planning. Why? Because with today's estate tax exemption being so high, only very, very few people will end up paying an estate tax. But I want to point out, estate planning is not about estate taxes for the majority of us. Only 1/10 of 1% of households will end up having or being part of a taxable estate. In my mind, I like to tell people that estate planning is really about the ability of a individual to speak when they can't speak for themselves. And basically, if you look at this chart of documents, each one of these little circles gives a person the ability to speak when they can't speak for themselves. A power of attorney or a healthcare advocate are both documents that if you're 18 years old or 65 years old, you need to have. Why? Because even if you're still alive but incapacitated, those documents will basically allow others to speak, take care of you, and basically allow them to follow what your wishes are with respect to your health needs. The other documents also, a trust. If, again, you're only incapacitated, do you want to deal with a court having to take care of you and appoint somebody to take care of you, or do you want to have a document in place that will tell the world how you want to live and how you want the wealth you created in your lifetime to be used after you're no longer around? So the advantage of having a trust is to avoid that bottom circle, which is called probate. Probate basically means you go to court, a judge will assess everything and make decisions about your wealth and about other factors in your life, if you're still alive, on how you will cope, and others will take care of you if you're alive, or how your wealth will be transferred to others if you're no longer alive. So basically, people want to avoid probate, and that's done by, first of all, having accounts with proper designations, as Adam previously mentioned. Now, does your 401k have beneficiaries, or the proper beneficiaries? Is your banking and checking account in your own name, in a trust name, or in joint with a spouse? Anything that passes by operation of law will not go through probate. Only assets that need to be distributed or taken care of via a will, it will go through probate. That's what we see right now here in Michigan with respect to Aretha Franklin. All of a sudden, everybody assumed that there was no will. and everything was going to follow Michigan law that every state has, that basically deals with when people pass without a will, how will their assets be distributed? And now all of a sudden we have a question, is there a will? And that is going to court to be decided upon. So again, important documents, whether you're 18 years old or 65 or 70 years old, make sure that your wishes are being followed by having a proper will, trust, and other documents in place. Also like to point out a couple of little issues. One, a parent who is getting older and is considering what to do with their money. Again, the ideal document to have is a trust. A trust will dictate what your wishes are. And you could actually do things for your children that they cannot do for you, for themselves, I mean. For instance, you can leave assets to a child that will be protected from creditors, protected from their own mistakes in life, and will follow a bloodline. It's harder for an individual to accomplish the same things on their own. So again, you have the ability as a person getting older to protect not the assets that you created for the benefit of your children and future heirs. So a lot of things to consider, and we like to say that we work as a team with your legal counsel, tax counsel, in coming up with the specifics of what your estate plan would look like, and it's basically dictating what your priorities are, the same way we're talking about a financial plan, your estate plan, which basically is what do you want to see happen with your assets when you no longer can speak for yourself. Those plans are what we implement with the team of professionals. And go to the next slide. You can see that the documents have impact at various stages in life. Obviously, many will be used after death. Certain aspects are used during life. The last one, number 6, the HIPAA release form, I always like to tell a crowd that it's important if you have children, when they get to age of majority, and prior to that age, as a parent, you had full legal control over the children. Once they hit age of majority, you all of a sudden are an outsider with respect to certain laws, and HIPAA release forms, et cetera, and advanced directives become even critical. So one thing we suggest is if you have a child about to go to college, make sure they complete those forms. So if something happens and you need to deal with health issues when they're away in college, make sure you have those forms on behalf of your children done so you can be involved with their care going forward. So again, estate planning documents are really there to express your wishes and not necessarily deal with estate taxes. But there's obviously advantages. There are ways to minimize estate taxes with properly structured documents and properly structured strategies. So for the majority of you, just consider them as documents that need to be reviewed. I like to say, as Adam indicated before, when their life changes, or roughly every 10 years, because we're in a cycle of a lot of tax law changes, and the tax law changes could dictate how your assets should be used after you're no longer available to explain that to the authorities going forward.
Okay. All right, thanks, Andy. Yeah, so that's going to conclude our presentation and what we wanted to talk about today. Again, there's a lot of tools that we have that can help you get started on these financial plans and help you assess where you're at. So here's some of our contact information if you want to reach out to us to get some of those tools, or if you have some more questions specifically on what we talked today. But we are going to open it up to any questions. Anybody on the line who wants to submit a question, we're happy to answer and go over anything we went over today.
I don't think there's
Okay.
any questions. I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you, Adam and Andy. This was a lot of great information. And again, if anyone has any questions or want to go through the financial planning process, please reach out to Adam and Andy. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks so much for everybody attending, and again, reach out. We're happy to help. So take care.